Hi, I'm Michaela and welcome back to my greenhouse, or my channel and my greenhouse. So today I'm going to be talking about my first year with a greenhouse, what I would do differently, and just a little bit of information because I actually get a lot of questions from people thinking about getting greenhouses. So this is just intended to be me sharing my experience in hopes that it will be helpful to you. So we'll just go ahead and get started. Okay, so obviously a greenhouse is it's like the dream for a houseplant person. It's beautiful and they're very romanticized. However, it's probably pretty obvious, but they are actually a lot of work and it's a big commitment to have a greenhouse, especially a really large one like the one that I have. If you are someone who is prone to plant burnout or don't have a lot of spare time, or maybe you travel a lot, I would say an outdoor greenhouse is probably just going to end up being more stress than fun for you, more than likely. Thinking back to a time whenever I was very busy and was working a lot, I don't think that this would have been good for my mental health at all, and I probably would have wound up hating plants, which is a really sad thought. So anyway, yeah, I'm just trying to honestly convey to you how much work this is in reality. So I'm just going to be going over some things I've learned about it, and hopefully it helps you out. Keeping plants in a greenhouse has been very different from keeping them inside my house in a lot of different ways. I think there's a misconception that plants in a greenhouse will maintain themselves, and that's definitely not the case. They require a lot more work than they do inside your house. However, they grow so much better. You'll be amazed at the growth that you see from your plants inside of a greenhouse. I would recommend it overall. However, I want to make sure that it's understood how big of a commitment a greenhouse is. And I'm sure my face is going to be getting sweatier and sweatier as this video goes on because I have all of the fans and inflators off so that you can actually hear me. This is my second time filming this because there was just too much background noise the other time that I tried it, so we're going at it again. Just please excuse this. Okay, so I live in Plant Hardiness Zone 6B in Springfield, Missouri. It is pretty mild here most of the year. We do get cold winters and a little bit of snow, and it does get pretty hot in the summer, but overall it's pretty mild. It's sunny most of the time. We get maybe an average of 4 inches of rain each month. The greenhouse that I have is the Growspan Gothic Pro Greenhouse 14 by 24, and I purchased it through a company called Farm Tech. When I purchased that greenhouse, it came with the inflator, the exhaust fan, and one natural gas heater. I ended up adding another natural gas heater and one evaporative cooler, and then I have 2 shade cloths, one that I use in the winter and one that I use in the summer. I have a white 50% shade cloth that I use in the summer, and in the winter I have a 40% shade cloth that just goes on the south facing roof pitch. We also, by we, as usual, I mean my husband, we made a roll-up ceiling out of the roll-up side mechanism that came with the greenhouse of just that Reflectix to help prevent heat loss at night during the winter. This greenhouse did come with roll-up sides, but we ended up replacing that for polycarbonate just to help with heat loss and pest control and humidity. One note about this greenhouse is that it did have to be delivered freight, so I was not able to get it delivered directly to my house because I don't own a forklift. It had to be shipped to a place called XPO Logistics out in Marshfield, it's a little ways from Springfield, but we had to rent a trailer and go pick it up from there because it was all in pallets. So they were able to load it for us, and that was very helpful. Just something to note if you're not able to pull a trailer, or on the off chance that you don't own a forklift. It's just something about this specific greenhouse, which I would imagine most people watching this video probably wouldn't go this big, but just in case you are looking to, that was one thing about the greenhouse that I got. So something that I found surprising and interesting is that it is a lot easier to heat a greenhouse than to cool it, which makes, I mean, it makes perfect sense because the solar gains are warming it up. There's no, it doesn't have like a solid roof on it, so it makes a lot of sense. But I usually just only had to use the heaters at night when it was below 50. During the day, if it was anywhere above approximately 50 degrees Fahrenheit, I did not have to use the heaters, and I actually had to run the exhaust fan because it just got so hot in here. It'll get up to 100 degrees probably before 9 or 10 a.m. Even in the winter. The sun is what heats it up more than anything. Now, I did have to use the evaporative cooler. If it's sunny and anywhere above around 65 degrees Fahrenheit, I have to run the exhaust fan and the evaporative cooler because it just gets so warm in here. And when it gets really hot in the summer, I switch out the shade cloths to keep from absorbing more heat, and I go through and I mist and water things throughout the day to keep it cooled down. You definitely could automate it more than I have, but obviously that costs money, so I have not done that, and I'm still kind of researching what exactly I want to do so I don't end up wanting to redo it later. That is on my list of things to do eventually, but not quite yet. I did talk a little bit about differences in plant care out in the greenhouse. The most notable being that plants require so much more water out here than they do in my house. Even in the winter, I have to water at least once a day. They dry up a lot more quickly with the amount of light that they're getting, and obviously along with that, fertilizing needs increase quite a bit as the plants are utilizing more light and water. They need more nutrients as well. I don't really know how to tell you a specific frequency or how to fertilize or how often. Just be familiar with your plants and understanding what they need based on what you are observing from them. Okay, the biggest one is pest control. And this is the case for inside your house too. It's not a matter of if you're gonna get pests, it's when, and it's nothing to be ashamed of or upset about. It just is what it is. It is a part of having plants. In a greenhouse, there is a lessened barrier to the outside world, so it's easier for pests to get in addition to the conditions being optimal for them. The best way I have found to treat pests is to try and stay ahead of it. So I'm checking all these plants very frequently to make sure they don't have pests. Pests are drawn to plants that are undergoing some type of stress. So like underwatering will draw in pests. If a plant is really dry, it's going to be stressed out and it makes it an easy target. So making sure that you keep everything well watered and free of like dust and dirt on the leaves, just keeping them clean helps a lot. The most useful product that I have found in treating pests is actually neem oil, so that is what I use out here. I've tried a few other things, but neem oil honestly just does the best for me. One other note is to be really careful with the products that you're using because, like I said, the lessened barrier to the outside, a lot of pest control fertilizer products can be very harmful to wildlife and insects that are actually very important. So just be careful what you're using. So another very important note regarding pest control is overwintering. I guarantee you that if anyone knows you have a greenhouse, they are going to be asking you to overwinter things from them, whether or not you know them well or are close to them. People are just going to ask, and just don't do it. Especially if you're running a business, you don't want to risk a pest infestation because you don't know the condition of someone's personal plants, especially if it's like something flowering or produces fruit, those are a lot more prone to pests than something like a philodendron is. So just be really careful, and you don't know the conditions that things are coming from. I'm somebody who felt horrible saying that to people. There was a lady who asked me to overwinter this family heirloom hibiscus, and I couldn't do it because those are very prone to aphids, and I could not risk an infestation of aphids because I was being nice, you know? I know it sounds mean, but it's just not worth it, and if people know that up front, they're not going to ask you, and it's ultimately not your responsibility. I mean, don't get a plant if you can't take care of it. If it gets too big, prune it back. That just is what it is. It isn't your responsibility to take care of other people. Dang, this turned into a life lesson. Okay, so this is the part you have probably been waiting for, and that is what this thing cost me. All in all, from what I was going through and adding up today, I think everything, that's the greenhouse, the benches, the trays, pots, all of that stuff, cost me around $10,000, which I'm sure that cost would go down if it were a smaller greenhouse. And then it ended up adding an average of $150 to $200 to my utility bill each month. And that's not broken down by like gas or electricity, water, etc. Our utility company just bills it all together, but consistently that's about how much extra my bills have been since operating this greenhouse. And I'll have on the screen a breakdown of what everything cost and everything that I needed for this. And keep in mind that I do use this for a business. This is not just a fun place for me to hang out and mess around with my plants. I do operate this as a business, so that is why that cost was practical for me, in addition to the extra on my utility bills each month. If I weren't selling out of it, I don't think it would have been practical for me. But I mean, if it is for you, that's awesome. Just something to note. Okay, so here's a little breakdown of what everything cost. The greenhouse itself, I purchased at the beginning of 2021, and at that time it was $7,181.67, and it did come with the inflator, the exhaust fan, and one natural gas heater. The equipment rental that I needed for this was one trailer and one lawn roller to prepare the site, and the total for that was $73.34. The air conditioner that I used was $369. The heater was $175. The grow lights were $161, and the materials for installing the polycarbonate sides added up to $527, and that included the polycarbonate material, the lumber, and the screws. The benches cost us about $345 to make. We did have a lot of the material already, so that price may vary a little bit. All of the trays and the pots that I purchased added up to $427.21, and there are tons of them. I bought it about a year ago, and I still have a ton of pots left, so that's going to last me for a really long time. All of the plumbing and electrical supplies and labor added up to $500, but again, that may vary for you. And then miscellaneous was about $655, and that included a very wide range of things that I can't really list in total. So like the landscape fabric for the floor, there was greenhouse tape, shelving, just all kinds of different things that I probably could not live without for this greenhouse. All of these things I would say are entirely necessary, and the total that I spent on everything was $10,465.22. If I had it to do over again, there are a handful of things that I probably would have done differently. For instance, I think it probably would have been a little bit cheaper for me to just do a wood frame with polycarbonate on it, But at the time, this seemed like a really good idea because it included so many of the tools that I would need, like the exhaust fan and the inflator and the heater. So I was pretty overwhelmed at the time that I purchased it, which was in February of 2021, and it was just marketed as a kit, and I thought that that's what I needed, and I am very happy with this greenhouse. I think I might have saved a little money had I done it that way. Another thing about this one specifically is that it was very difficult to put together. We thought that it was going to be easy. The individual that I spoke to at Farm Tech assured me that it would take a group of friends one day to put it together. That is not how it went for us. And it was my family, my husband's family, and all of us did have knowledge of construction beforehand. And I would say all of us are pretty handy, and it was a real struggle to get this thing together. So just something to think about. I am happy with how it turned out. We just did not end up being able to follow the directions exactly, because I think the directions were very generalized and intended to fit a lot of different greenhouses that they sell. I think the most important thing is, if you're thinking about getting a greenhouse, it's just important to be flexible and learn as you go, and realize that there is going to be quite a learning curve with learning how to care for plants differently in a little bit of a changed environment. So I have enjoyed this experience a ton. It's been infuriating at times. Like, for instance, when I had an issue with the heater, we were told that one heater would likely be enough to heat the whole thing. However, I think it was not. It just wasn't. So we were using a temporary job site heater until we could get the second heater installed, which, and I told this story before, which was producing too much CO2 and causing the safety sensor on one of our natural gas heaters to turn itself off. So it wasn't staying warm enough during a really cold spell that we had. But once we got the second heater installed, it was great. So just being flexible and learning as you go is really important. During that time, I got spooked and I took all the plants in my house and I sold probably like 100 of them on Facebook, just because I thought that I was gonna lose them. I did not actually end up losing any plants, so it was unnecessary. But yeah, you just kind of have to be flexible and adaptable when you're learning how to do something new. And if I had waited until I knew everything about greenhouses, or thought that I did, or felt ready to give it a try, I would have never done it. It's just gonna be a learning curve, and that's all there is to it. So I think that's all I have to say about my greenhouse adventure. I will, of course, keep you posted on how things continue to go in the greenhouse. And if you have any questions for me about greenhouses, please feel free to leave them in the comments or send me a DM on Instagram, and I will answer them as best I can, based on my experience, of course. And hopefully my greenhouse has inspired you to maybe think about getting a greenhouse, and I would absolutely recommend it. Yeah, so I think that is everything I have to say today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at Queen City Tropicals, and I will see you again soon.